So today we're going to be talking about training with proper form and how you can get the most out of every lift that you do, every session you do, every set that you do. Okay, this is a very, very important part of it because when we come to doing our sessions, they're very much about just making the most out of every last thing we do in the sessions. There's not a massive amount of form because they're quite intense. We go in and we're out, okay? It's just an hour of intense training. So we want you to back that up with as many foundations as possible. So it's important that you really know all of this. So we're gonna go through all of the most important aspects of training with proper form. So we're gonna start off with number one, which is range of motion and the active range. So range of motion basically describes the range in which you are moving in a given lift. Now, this is massively kind of overlooked, or like it's not done correctly with a lot of people. Most people view range of motion as basically the further you move, the better it is. So they press and the elbows come right back and they overextend, and because the range of motion is longer, they think it's better, but it's not the case. What we're actually looking more towards is the active range. So active range describes the range that your muscle works at, and this is unique to each individual, the range that your muscle works at and can still keep a contraction and keep tension. So if you're dropping too low, you actually lose tension and you won't be working the muscle to the best of its ability. If you go too far, you can easily take tension off the muscle. So we have to look at finding your ideal active range, and we'll do this within sessions with you. Tension, the most important part of a weight lift, of a lifting weights, is that you have tension in the muscle, okay? So most people, again, load up too much weight that they can't lose tension. They end up going too far with the range of motion, they lose tension at the bottom. So they find themselves resting bottom and resting top of each movement. So basically in a set of, let's say, 10 reps, they're actually doing single reps because they're losing tension in between every single one. The aim of a set is to keep tension throughout the whole set. Okay, so this is the most important because this is what is going to cause the real damage to the muscle. You could have 200 kilos in your arms, but if there's no tension through the muscle because you're moving it too quick, then the weight's irrelevant. So what's important is you load up as much weight as you possibly can, but maximum tension, okay? Tempo kind of goes with tension. So as if you're reasonably new to training, you're gonna need to keep very, very slow tempos to ensure that you're keeping proper tension in the muscle, okay? Because your muscles aren't used to moving with complete tension, and it will come the more you train, you can speed up the movements. Because your muscles aren't used to moving with proper tension and contracting with tension throughout movements, you're going to need to stick to a reasonably slow tempo. Now, a perfect tempo is kind of 3 seconds on the eccentric, the lowering phase. 3 seconds on that. So it's basically like if you're looking at a bench press, the lowering phase of this would be this, that would be the eccentric phase. And you're looking about 3 seconds is a perfect time for that. But some of you may even need to go to maybe 4 seconds. And you'll feel a difference in terms of the burn in the muscle when you do this. Now the concentric phase, the pushing, the contraction phase can be a little bit quicker. Now 1 second is, if you're reasonably trained, 1 second is perfect. But some of you may need to even slow that down to maybe 2 seconds, potentially 3 seconds. But again, this is all determined by whether you can keep tension in the muscle through the movement. If you can't, you need to slow it down every time. All right? Mind muscle. This is about creating a connection between the mind and the muscle when you're performing all lifts. So this basically means that you've got more thought into contracting a muscle rather than moving a weight in hand. So when I'm doing a bench press, I'm not thinking about moving this bar from here to here because that's irrelevant. What I'm thinking about is contracting my chest as hard as I possibly can with the weight in hand, and that is causing this weight to load up onto this chest 10 times more than just pushing a weight where it's going to recruit all sorts of different muscles and you're going to be very unstable. So in all movements, you've got to think ahead of the game, what muscle am I working? And you're going to think, how am I going to contract that muscle? The weight in hand is only the resistance placed on the muscle, okay? Nothing more, all right? Load. So load is important. Load being the amount of weight you have on a lift. It's important, but only once you've got all these in place. So if the load, if the fact that you're loading up excess weight onto a load, onto a bar is meaning that you're going too fast, you're losing tension, your range of motion's too far, or you can't create a connection between the mind and the muscle, then the weight's too much. Every single time the weight is too much if you can't keep these in check. So only when these are on point can you start loading up more weight onto the bar. Too many times you see people add on 10 kilo to the bar and lose this and start going faster and lose tension at the top, tension at the bottom, and the active range starts extending, they're locking out, they're going too deep. This is not good because you basically, although the weight looks better, it looks like you've got more load on the bar, you're actually denying yourself of the result that you would have got if you kept all these in check, okay? So actually sometimes by increasing the weight, you're actually giving yourself less benefit, okay? Finally, intensity. This is very, very important. And again, this only comes once you've got the rest of these in check. Intensity is about how hard you're pushing. Now the body will only ever change, it will only ever start packing on muscle if you're forcing it to do so. It's a survival mechanism, muscle. If you don't put it in an environment where it has to pack on muscle to deal with the demands, i.e. excess weight, more stimulus on the muscle, then it simply won't feel the need to grow any muscle. So you need to be progressively lifting heavier weight, progressive overload. You need to be making sure you're stimulating the muscle enough with enough weight, with a controlled tempo, which is flooding nutrients into the muscle, burning it, lactic acid. You need to be making sure all of this is going with maximum tension in the muscle to make sure this stimulus is sufficient enough for the body to go, yes, I need to respond to this by adding on more muscle. Okay, this is very important. But again, intensity is just about mentally how hard can you push, how many extra reps can you push yourself to do when you don't want to do them. Very, very important. So we're going to be now looking at a specific lift. We're going to be looking at the dumbbell chest press, and we're going to be looking at all the aspects we just discussed and how we can kind of implement it into this lift. Now, the first thing you want to look at on any weight lift is stability. The first thing you need to look at is how are you stable? So how do we stabilize? We need to make sure we are completely locked in on every movement and that we're moving weight from a stable base. So if our feet are off the ground, we're on our toes, and we're very unstable on the bench, you're not going to be able to place much tension through the muscles you're trying to work. So the first thing we think about is driving heels hard into the ground and creating as much stability through the limbs, through the lower limbs, and also holding ourselves tight onto the bench. That's the first thing you want to think about before you do anything. Then we're going to look at the range of motion, okay? So the range of motion is going to be unique to everyone. We're looking at the active range, not how far your muscle and joint will go, because most of the time it'll go beyond where we want to go. So we're going to look at Jack's arm first without a weight. So we're going to be pressing. So his range of motion. First, we're going to look at where the chest is. So the dumbbell press is working the chest and it works triceps. But there's other exercises for triceps. So we always want to do, on a compound lift like this, we always want to be looking at working the chest, the bigger muscle here. So we want to put all our focus into working the chest. So the chest is obviously here, it attaches, center of the chest, attaches onto here. So the range of motion we're looking at to stretch this muscle as much as we can. We're looking at bringing the elbow as far away from the body as possible, because this is stretching these 2 points as far away from each other. So what we're looking for is where the stretch starts, not as deep into the stretch as we can go. So what a lot of people do is they go this all the way down, and that's so far beyond where he can activate from the chest that you lose tension and other muscles need to be recruited to create the movement. Jack's actual range of motion, where I'd say his active range would be, where he's contracting hard at the top here, his active range is coming down, and I'd say it's probably about here, okay? So for most people, they think flipping it, that's quite not as low as they thought. Like if he was pressing a bar, it's quite high above the chest. But that is where he'll be able to initiate a contraction from there. Any lower starts to get too deep into the stretch. Yeah, and this is going to be unique too. Some people will go a little bit lower, some people maybe a little bit higher. Okay, but that's important to know. And to find the cue for you, it's basically where the stretch initiates, not how deep you can go. It's literally where you feel the first bit of the stretch. All right, we're now going to look at tempo. So I'm going to get Jack to pick up the weights in a second. But firstly, tempo is for me personally, my opinion is tempo is only important as far as an individual can hold tension. So basically what I mean by that is if you can hold tension, maximum tension, at a fast tempo, then that fast tempo is pretty good, it's fine. The problem is most untrained individuals, in fact almost every single untrained individual who hasn't been training for years and years and years, will not be able to hold tension at fast pace, okay? Jack's trained for a long time, he may well be able to push weight quite quick and hold maximum tension, but for the sake of this, we're gonna keep it very, very slow, okay? And we'll go through, basically, we're gonna work through a few different tempos. So I'm gonna get you to jump up and grab your weights and then get back into position. So the first thing to do is you're gonna set himself into a strong position, chest up really, really tall to make sure this is the dominant area. He's gonna lie back. And he's gonna bring his, I'd always start from the top. Always start from the top of a movement, all right? And then pin the shoulders back. Chest's gonna be the highest point. Chest is solid, so we know he's got a contraction on here. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna work the active range of Jack here. So we're gonna drop the weight down slowly, elbows are gonna come out. Gonna keep that head back, and we're gonna pause just about here. And from here, he's gonna squeeze up for about 2 seconds, and his intention is bringing biceps close in here, because that's where the chest is. So he's gonna squeeze up, he's gonna squeeze in there, finish about here. So again, solid contraction. He's gonna stretch the 2 points as far away from each other as possible, come a little bit down with the elbows, and squeeze up. Good. So bring these elbows a little bit down here. Here, pause here, squeeze biceps in here. Let's go. Back, okay? Slowly. So you notice it's very smooth. Every part of this movement is smooth. Go again. There's no sudden drop, pause, and squeeze. There's no sudden drop. There's no movements that are quicker than others. Obviously, the upward phase is a little bit quicker than the downward phase, but that's absolutely fine. Go again. One more. Slow. 3, 2, pause, squeeze. So he's doing about a 3-second down and roughly a 1-second concentric. So we'll go a little bit slower on the way up now, which you may well need to do if you are, again, untrained and unable to hold tension. So we're gonna look at doing maybe 4 seconds down. 4, 3, 2, pause and contract. 3, go 2, squeeze straight down. 4, 3, 2, pause a little bit slower, up 3, 2, squeeze and down. 4, last one, 4, 3, 2, pause, squeeze, 3, 2, 1. Relax down, pop that down. So, as you can see, Jack has got a very good mind-muscle connection. Everything's being pushed through the pec. There's not much, he's very stable with the movement. You can see the focus, the pecs, the chest doesn't really lose any tension throughout. You can see, as I said, at the top, very solid at the top. And this is easier for Jack because he's trained for so long and he's built that kind of mind-muscle connection up over the years. But for a lot of people who are new to weightlifting, even in the first few years, you're going to need to think about it a lot more. And so obviously slowing down the movements will help you a hell of a lot. Now, you can see Jack can lift a lot more weight than that. So the load could probably go up. But as soon as Jack's form starts to go, he starts dropping too far. He starts speeding up the movement beyond what he was doing previously, or anything else, like the tempo's going a little bit faster, he's losing tension, then he needs to think about dropping that weight back down again, because that wouldn't be classed as a progression. If the form has to change to make a progression, that's not a progression, okay? And lastly, intensity. Again, as you can see, 15 kilos is not enough to really be pushing his intensity unless he was doing 40-odd reps with a slow tempo, so he needs some more weight. Like I say, so long as he can keep that form, he's good to go and load up and load up and load up until he's maxing out and failing on that weight. All right, cool. Catch you soon.